All right, diving in again with another deep dive. This time, we're all about unlocking that vigor and vitality thing and the secret weapon, food.
Sounds delicious.
Right. The chapter we're looking at is actually called Optimum Nutrition for Vigor and Vitality, so pretty straightforward. But what hooked me is this idea that what we eat or don't eat can really hold us back from feeling our best.
It's amazing how much our diet impacts how we feel, isn't it?
Totally. And to help break it all down, we've got our expert here ready to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. This chapter's take on food as medicine really resonated with me. Kind of a back-to-basics approach, like Hippocrates was saying ages ago.
So true. And speaking of basics, this source jumps right in with a pretty bold statement. 45 essential nutrients. 45. The body needs all of those to function right. That's a lot.
It is. It's like if you're building a house, you need all the right materials. You
Wow.
can't just skip the foundation and expect things to stand up straight.
So what happens if we're missing some of these nutrients?
Well, like that house, things start to get shaky. These nutrients all have specific roles, you know. Some are key for our brains to work right, like certain fats. Others, like vitamin C, help our bodies repair, build tissues, all that.
Right, so it's not just about like scurvy or those big deficiency diseases, right?
Exactly. Even if we're not full-blown deficient, just being a little low on certain nutrients can mess with our energy, our mood, even just how we feel overall.
Makes sense. So hitting our macros isn't enough. We got to make sure they're actually packing the right micronutrients too.
Exactly. And this is where the chapter gets really interesting. It points the finger at, well, how we process food these days. All that refining, storing, treating, it strips away a lot of the good stuff.
Ah, so it's not just what we eat, but the quality of it.
Exactly. It's like we're getting empty calories, but
Mm.
also empty nutrients.
I like that. And the chapter gives some pretty clear examples, like refining grains, stripping away the German bran, or just how long food sits around, losing vitamins over time.
And then there are the chemical treatments, right? Bleaching, preservatives, we might gain convenience, but are we losing the nutritional value in the process?
Good point. So, how do we fight back against this nutrient drain? The chapter seems pretty passionate about a diet rich in, well, basically anything that grows seeds, nuts, grains, veggies, fruits. They claim we can get all 45 essential nutrients that way. Is that even possible?
It's definitely a great goal to aim for. This chapter is all about whole foods, as close to their natural state as possible. And while variety is key, there's something to be said about understanding what each food group brings to the table.
Right. They seem especially excited about seeds, nuts, and grains, particularly this thing called the germ. They talk about it like it's some kind of superpower food.
Yeah.
What's so special about it?
Well, it's not magic, but it's pretty amazing. The germ is essentially the plant embryo, packed with nutrients to kickstart that initial growth spurt. We're talking B vitamins, vitamin E, zinc, magnesium, even helpful enzymes and antioxidants.
Wow, that's a lot packed into a tiny seed.
Right, it's like concentrated nutrition.
Yeah.
And the chapter specifically calls out sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, almonds, even peanuts and soybeans for being protein powerhouses too.
Suddenly I'm feeling a bit peckish.
Right. And what's even cooler is that when we sprout these seeds and grains, we boost the germ's benefits even more. Sprouting wakes up those dormant nutrients, making them easier for our bodies to actually use.
So we're not just getting more nutrients, we're getting more out of them. That's clever. What about vegetables? Pretty much every diet out there says to load up on the greens.
For good reason, vegetables are like nutritional gold mines filled with vitamins, minerals, fiber, and those crucial enzymes. But here's the thing. Cooking, especially with heat, can destroy some of that goodness.
Ah, so the chapter's emphasis on eating them raw or barely cooked makes sense.
Exactly. They even have some tips, like steaming or boiling in their own juices, not peeling if you don't have to. Little things that can make a big difference.
Good to know. And they keep talking about variety, right? Different parts of the plant, from roots to stems to leaves, even the fruits and seeds offer different nutrients.
Exactly. A carrot versus spinach, both veggies, but they each bring something unique to the table. So the more diverse our veggie intake, the wider range of nutrients we get.
All right, sold on more veggies, less peeling. Now, what about fruit? The chapter mentions some interesting things: cleansing the blood and digestion, high alkaline properties, low in protein and fat. And they say both fresh and dried fruits are good.
That's a good point. Dried fruits sometimes get a bad rap for being sugary, but they're actually packed with fiber, potassium, iron. Like most things, moderation is key.
So no demonizing any food group, just understanding what they offer and finding a balance that works for us.
That's a great way to put it. And it doesn't stop there. The chapter suggests adding some extra goodies to this already pretty comprehensive diet. Milk, particularly yogurt and cottage cheese, unrefined oils, and honey.
Okay, so we've got our plant-based foundation, and now we're adding in some strategic extras.
Exactly. Yogurt and cottage cheese provide a kind of pre-digested milk, easier to absorb. Unrefined oils are loaded with essential fatty acids, vitamins, lecithin, crucial for all sorts of bodily functions.
And honey, that's like nature's multivitamin, right? The chapter goes on and on about its benefits. But there was one thing that surprised me. They seem a bit wary of animal protein, especially meat.
Yes, they suggest it can actually slow down healing and maybe even harm our overall health. Now, to be fair, they're not saying to completely ditch animal products.
More like being mindful of how much we're eating and considering the potential impact.
Right. And it's definitely something to think about. Speaking of which, I'm sure our listeners are curious about how this all translates to actual meals. Luckily, the chapter provides a sample daily menu, ready to see what a day of optimal nutrition looks like according to this source.
Absolutely. My stomach's already rumbling.
So we kick off the day with something simple. Warm water with lemon and honey. Or, a fresh juice if you prefer.
Okay, I can get behind that. What juices do they recommend?
Let's see. Apple, pineapple, orange, sweet lime, or grapes.
Nice, lots of options. And then for breakfast, I'm assuming it's not just juice, right?
Oh, definitely not. They suggest a good serving of fresh fruit. Apples, oranges, bananas, grapes, really whatever's in season. Along with that, a cup of buttermilk or unpasteurized milk. And to top it off, handful of raw nuts or maybe a couple tablespoons of those sunflower and pumpkin seeds for the protein boost.
Wow, that's a pretty serious breakfast. Definitely hits all the whole food notes.
Right, lots of variety too.
What about snacks? I always get those mid-morning munchies.
They've got you covered. Mid-morning, they keep it simple. Another piece of fruit or a small handful of nuts. Just enough to keep your energy going.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, lunch. This is where I struggle to be healthy A&D satisfied.
Well, this menu might give you some ideas. They suggest a bowl of steamed veggies. Carrots, broccoli, spinach, things like that. Seasoned simply, just a bit of salt, maybe some oil and butter. And with that, a slice or two of whole grain bread or chapatis. Oh, and a glass of buttermilk on the side.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty filling and still sticking with the whole unprocessed theme.
Exactly. And then for that afternoon energy dip, they suggest another juice, fruit or veggie, or, another piece of fruit if you're still feeling peckish.
I'm sensing a theme here. Keep it fresh, keep it natural.
Definitely. And then for dinner, things get really interesting.
Oh, lay it on me.
So it starts with a big salad, like really loaded up. Leafy greens, tomatoes, carrots, cabbage, cucumbers, beets, onions, the works, with a simple lime juice dressing.
Okay, I'm liking this already. Salad's my jam. What else?
Then you add some sprouts, alfalfa, mung beans, for some crunch and extra nutrients. And if you're really craving some cooked veggies, they say go for it. And to finish it off, a tablespoon of fresh butter, some cottage cheese, or a glass of buttermilk.
Wow, that's a feast. And it covers all the bases. But there's one thing I noticed throughout this whole menu. They're really big on limiting liquids during meals. Like, don't drink anything while you're eating, wait at least 30 minutes before or an hour after. Why is that?
Yeah, they talk about that specifically. The idea is that drinking with meals can dilute our digestive juices, which can make it harder for our bodies to break down and absorb all those nutrients. So by waiting to drink, we're giving our digestion a chance to work its magic without interference.
Interesting. So it's about working with our bodies, not against them. But let's be real, this whole food thing sounds pretty idealistic. How practical is it to actually eat like this in our busy world?
That's a fair point, and the chapter does acknowledge that. Time constraints, cost, even just finding some of these foods can be a challenge. But I'm not saying we have to be perfect. It's about making small changes, moving in the right direction, even if it's just one step at a time.
So progress, not perfection. That's where a lot of us get stuck, right?
Yeah.
Trying to change everything at once and then getting discouraged when we slip up.
Exactly. This chapter is more about a gentle approach, something sustainable. And the interesting thing is, as we start eating more whole foods, our tastes often change too. We start craving those fresh flavors, and those processed foods we used to love just don't seem as appealing anymore.
It's like we're re-educating our taste buds, learning to appreciate what real food has to offer. And speaking of that sample menu, it was pretty detailed, but it also highlighted some key principles. It wasn't just about specific ingredients, but about how we approach our meals.
Right. Fresh, seasonal produce whenever possible. Minimal processing. And that focus on those nutrient-packed food groups. Seeds, nuts, grains, veggies, fruits. It's a framework we can adapt to our own needs and preferences.
So it's not about rigid rules, but about understanding the principles and applying them in a way that works for us, taking ownership of our health and making choices that feel good, both physically and mentally.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the real transformation happens. When we move beyond simply following a diet and start to connect with our food, how it makes us feel.
It's about tuning in to our bodies, recognizing those subtle signals of hunger, satisfaction, and energy, tapping into that inner wisdom that tells us what we need to thrive.
And remembering that food is more than just fuel. It can be a source of pleasure, connection, even creativity. When we approach it with that sense of curiosity and adventure, it opens up a whole new world.
This deep dive has definitely sparked my curiosity, and I hope it's done the same for our listeners. We've talked about essential nutrients, the downsides of processed foods, the power of a whole food approach, but most importantly, that true health and vitality are within our grasp.
It's been an inspiring conversation. And as we start to wrap things up, I'd like to leave our listeners with this thought. Don't underestimate the power of small changes. Start where you are, try new things, and most importantly, listen to your body. It's the best guide you have on this path to feeling your best.
As we've been talking about this whole food approach, I keep thinking about how overwhelming it could feel. Like it's a lot to process. For someone used to, well, a more convenient way of eating, it might be tough knowing where to even begin.
Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah.
The chapter definitely lays out an ideal. It's easy to get caught in that all or nothing trap. But the cool thing is, even small changes can have a ripple effect. We don't have to be perfect, just make conscious choices one meal at a time.
Great, like some of those little swaps they suggested. Steaming instead of boiling veggies, picking whole grains instead of refined, even just being mindful of when we drink. Those seem small, but they add up, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. As we start eating more whole foods, our taste buds actually start to change too. We start craving those fresh flavors, and the processed stuff we used to love just doesn't have the same pull anymore.
It's like we're retraining our palates to appreciate real food. And speaking of that sample menu, it was pretty detailed, but it also highlighted some key ideas. It wasn't just a list of ingredients, it was a whole approach to eating.
Exactly. Fresh, seasonal produce whenever we can get it. Minimal processing.
Yeah.
And that focus on those nutrient-dense foods we talked about. Seeds, nuts, grains, vegetables, fruits. It's a framework, not a rigid diet.
So it's not about following rules, it's about understanding the why behind it all and making it work for us, taking charge of our health and choosing foods that make us feel good inside and out.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic is. It's not just about dieting, it's about connecting with our food, understanding how it impacts us.
Being more in tune with our bodies, right? Noticing those subtle cues of hunger, feeling satisfied, having energy, tapping into that inner wisdom that tells us what we really need.
And remembering that food is more than just fuel. It can be enjoyable. It can connect us with others, even spark creativity. Approaching it with curiosity and a sense of adventure, that opens up a whole new world.
This deep dive has definitely gotten me thinking, and I hope it's done the same for our listeners. We've covered a lot of ground, from essential nutrients to the downsides of processed foods, the power of whole foods. But the main takeaway, for me at least, is that real health and vitality are achievable.
It's been a great conversation. And as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this. Don't underestimate small changes. Start where you are, experiment, try new things, and most importantly, listen to your body. It's your best guide on this journey to feeling your best.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress. Every step we take towards nourishing ourselves, body and mind, is a step towards a more vibrant and fulfilling life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exciting exploration. Until then, take care and happy eating.
And to our listeners, may your journey be filled with delicious discoveries and boundless energy.